Congressman Mike Gallagher, chairman of the House Select Committee on the Engagement with the Chinese Communist Party, joins me. One of the great things Kevin McCarthy got going was your committee, Chairman Gallagher. Does it continue its important work uninterrupted?
It does continue. As I read the rules and understand in consultations with the parliamentarian, committee work can continue. So we could continue to have briefings, hold hearings. We will continue our investigations, all of our public communication, our internal work. We just can't bring legislation through committees, which doesn't affect us because we don't have legislative jurisdiction. But we can't bring legislation to the floor, which does affect us because, as you know, there's a host of China-related legislation that's backlogged in the Congress. Things like banning or forcing a sale of TikTok, a coherent outbound investment regime, amending CFIUS so that the Chinese can't buy land near sensitive military bases. These are all things that need to be legislated by Congress, not subject to the whim of the executive branch. And until we have a speaker, it's simply not possible. On the point about the executive branch, if you'll permit me, Hugh, all this chaos does, our inability to be disciplined with our narrow majority, and it is very narrow, it empowers the executive branch, which is the last thing that conservatives want. It makes the federal government less accountable. At least under Speaker McCarthy, we were doing aggressive oversight of the executive branch for the first time in years. I get that passing conservative legislation was hard, but the people that deposed the speaker opposed his conservative continuing resolution, which had border security and a commission to fix our long-term debt issue. And then they cited our inability to pass conservative spending legislation as a reason for his deposal. It makes no sense. It's recursive logic.
Well, the attempt to impose any kind of coherence on this is impossible. Newt Gingrich said it last night. Derek Van Orden, one of your new colleagues, said it. People from as old as Newt Gingrich and as young in the Congress as Derek Van Orden all know the same thing. But what happens next? I mean, you had a conference meeting last night, right? A caucus meeting. What happens next?
Well, it was very short, and Patrick McHenry, who's acting Speaker pro tem, everything is basically subject to his decision right now. He said it made sense for us to go home, come back on Tuesday. The candidates who want to run for speaker in the interim can prepare their agenda, their pitch. We will have a meeting on Tuesday night wherein the various candidates will make their case. And then depending on how that goes, we'll have an internal vote in the caucus and then hopefully go to the floor Wednesday or Thursday for a speaker vote that hopefully avoids what happened in January, which is a prolonged and protracted speaker fight. That's the plan right now. But as you know, Hugh, the deadline for another government shutdown is bearing down upon us. So an obvious question to ask the candidates, in addition to what they intend to do about China, which admittedly I'm biased, but that is the most important question. What are we going to do about our Defense Department and our ability to beat communist China? And what legislation do you plan to bring to the floor on that? In addition to that, what's your short-term plan for avoiding another fiasco with the government shutdown leading to an internal speaker fight? Otherwise, we're just going to be doing the circular firing squad. Now, I will admit, I have sort of a radical view that now is the time to do, once you get past the short-term spending fight, now is the time to do a complete reorganization and reform of the budget and appropriations process. It makes absolutely no sense. The fundamental divide between authorizing and appropriations committees makes absolutely no sense. If you go back to the Dreyer Commission in the mid-90s, one of the things they recommended was collapsing the appropriations committees into the authorizing committees. Simple things like aligning the fiscal year with the regular year, which is the lowest of low-hanging fruit, would go a long way towards avoiding this complete chaos. I actually think there's a lot you can do in bipartisan fashion to clean up the nuts and bolts of how we budget, or don't budget, as the case may be.
Could the Speaker pro tem of the House, Patrick McHenry, bring up a spending bill, an omnibus, or a collection of our appropriations bills and send them over to the House? I mean, can he do that so that we do not cripple the new speaker with day one with the same knuckleheads?
That I do not know, Hugh. As I read the rules, I think he could. I think he decides what comes to the floor. And now put aside the question of whether he would want to do that, whether that will be wise for him or the caucus. I guess, and the caveat that I actually don't know the definitive answer to that question, but as I read it, I think he could bring something to the floor and elide the committees in the process, and maybe falls on that grenade so that the new speaker has a blank slate. Think about what the next speaker.
That's what I'm worried about. I am worried about the same 10 knuckleheads will do it again because that which gets rewarded gets repeated. They're getting clicks. I don't know what Nancy Mace was thinking about. I have no idea what Eli Crane was thinking about. I know what Dan Bishop thought, and Ralph Norman took the temperature, and they just said, "Oh, we're going to screw ourselves in our states," and it's too late for them to. So they didn't vote with the 8. But there's no clue there. So maybe we use Patrick McHenry, who's a very smart guy, to get a 15-month budget done that does what we need to get done, and then wait for the election to tell us if we have a president or not.
Yeah, there are worse things than a suboptimal budget negotiation outcome. One of them would be losing the 2024 election to the Democrats. I mean, look at the cost of losing the Senate on January 5th, 2021, if my dates are correct. I mean, the cost is trillions of dollars and counting. Again, for like a lack of internal discipline and teamwork in the Republican Party and self-sabotage in the Republican Party. Now we risk doing the same thing in the House, which is the one chamber that we have control of, and the only thing standing in the way of Biden and a complete sort of Green New Deal fantasy, turning America into Europe light at this point. So I get a narrow majority is hard. Nobody gets 100% of what they want. I've been forced to accept lower defense top lines than I would like, but the only way to be successful in a narrow majority is aggressive oversight, teamwork, return to regular order, and a willingness to make principled compromise without compromising your principles.
No, we can't do that, though. I mean, that's not possible. So I'm thinking McHenry goes and gets the DOD appropriation. That is the most important thing, the DOD appropriation, the Homeland Security appropriation. And then he says to the most reasonable Democrats, let's pass this and send it over to the Senate and see what comes back, and challenge the Senate to get it back in a hurry. And then he stays as the interim speaker because nobody wants this job. Chairman Gallagher. Nobody wants to get knifed in the back.
Yeah, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy. There's something, I wonder, Hugh, if I can express this in a way that makes sense. I think there's something bigger going on here, which is all these precedents. We're breaking all these precedents, right? From pulling fire alarms to threatening executions to deposing speakers. Like there are no norms anymore that are not capable of being shattered. And some of the most important rules in our system of government are not written down. They just come back to basic decency and restraints on human behavior. And I worry about the escalating spiral that creates, because usually when one party does it, the other party does it, which is why I think a lot of Democrats yesterday are going to regret voting to depose Speaker McCarthy and then celebrating that fact, because what goes around comes around.
Yeah, late Roman Republic stuff. I mean, it just continues. And I by the way, I applaud Speaker Pro Tem McHenry throwing out Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer from their cubbies, because that was part of the deal, right? They were supposed, we'll treat you like generous, gentlemanly people in a gracious fashion. And then they pulled the cork on Kevin yesterday. So out they go. And I'm all for that, but it is late Roman Republic stuff.
Yeah, it's very concerning. And again, the issue that you and I talk most about, our ability to deter a war with China and then win the new Cold War over the long term, I fear is suffering. We don't have 18 months to waste. We simply cannot waste 18 months awaiting the coming of some messianic presidential figure to solve all our problems. Congress needs to step up and lay the foundation for a successful foreign policy in the short term, in the midterm, and in the long term.
Yeah, if you have a chance to encourage McHenry today to go over and sit down with the Senate leadership on the Republican side and do a package, take the heat, and then go back to financial services, what he's really good at, and let someone have 15 months of just a clear sailing. Because we can't do this 3 or 4 more. Well, we can. We probably will, actually. I've been around long. There's actually probably no way out of this, but I'm glad you're at work with the time. Did you stay there all night, or did you just come in this morning?
I have to do a few meetings this morning, Hugh. But hey, I want to reassure you, Hugh. I want to end on a note of optimism and just say it's always darkest before it gets pitch black. Okay?
So that's exactly. We could do this all again next week. I mean, really, but these 10 knuckleheads are not going. The Wile E. Coyote congressmen are not going anywhere. Chairman Gallagher, thank you for joining us. Keep doing the work of this special select committee, please.